Hello, good afternoon and good evening, and suppose I should say good morning as well for good measure. Welcome to this taster webinar session for the brand new Masters in Global Affairs at the School of Global Affairs at Lancaster University. My name is Andrew Chubb. I'm the course convener of the MA Global Affairs, and I have with me Dr. Derek Hurd, who's the head of School of Global Affairs. My own research is focused on China's role in the evolving global order, its role in the world, and in particular, the role of Chinese domestic politics and how it interacts with how China behaves as an actor on the global stage. Derek, do you want to introduce a bit about what you work on?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I'm also a China specialist, and I work particularly on gender issues and masculinities and look at the way in which really important questions about gender are reflected in debates and practices in China and how they're shaping the China of the future.
And what we're really trying to do here is very future oriented. We're examining and developing multidisciplinary approaches to the major challenges that affect people and places all around the world. And of course, China is very central to that, as reflected in both Derek and I's biographies. But really what global affairs is all about is the challenges that affect people in different manifestations in all corners of the world. So just to give you a brief overview of today's session, the first sort of 5 minutes or so, we'll spend just introducing the place of this MA program within the School of Global Affairs suite of 4 brand new MA programs. Then we'll give a little overview of what to expect more specifically in this particular MA course on global affairs. And then we'll use about the last 20 minutes to dive into the kind of scenario simulation that you will encounter as a student in this program, and indeed across the other 4 related MA programs from the School of Global Affairs. So first of all, why don't I kick it over to Derek to tell us a little bit about the School of Global Affairs.
School of Global Affairs is a very exciting interdisciplinary space. We cover lots of different approaches to the world, disciplines ranging across history and politics and languages, international relations, philosophy, religion. We've got this really interesting mix, and we work together across research projects, teaching and engagement with the wider world. Multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary are keywords you will hear a lot. Humanities, arts, social sciences collaborating together. You'll also hear about that. And we take a very strong place-based approach to our work. And place-based means we really look at how global challenges are manifesting in specific local areas across the world. One of these local areas is right here in Lancaster, Morecambe, in the northwest of England. We have 4 degrees altogether in this set of global leadership MAs. Today we're talking to you about the MA Global Affairs. We also will have Ben Dalton with us later on in this webinar, talking a little bit about the Global Medical and Health Humanities MA. And the 2 other MAs are the MA Sustainability and Global Environmental Futures and the MA Artificial Intelligence, Society and Global Challenges. All MAs have distinctive modules in them that introduce the foundations of the specific topics that the MAs focus on, and crucially, they also have a set of shared modules to help build that interdisciplinarity that I've just been talking about across these subject areas. And students on the 4 master's programs will work together, will collaborate together on some carefully structured, shared modules, and we'll talk about them in a bit more detail later on in this webinar. So research in the school. Well, I've touched on the collaborative, interdisciplinary way in which we approach research on global challenges. And it's really about realizing that if we are to solve some of these immense challenges, these difficulties facing us, whether they're geopolitical or to do with AI, and the opportunities and threats that it brings with it, or if it's climate change and the environmental futures that we need to build, or if it's dealing with the next pandemic, or even designing futures, hospitals for our future, we need to take multidisciplinary, collaborative approaches. So that means working from multiple perspectives and bringing that collaboration into the way in which we work. And we work at planetary scale. These are global challenges, yet they manifest at the local level. And that's where the place-based approach comes in. And so you will be working with people in the local area to think through how to respond to some of these local manifestations of global challenges. We have locally a lot of interesting ways and sites through which we can do that, ranging from big energy sites or docks, rural areas, deindustrialized sectors, and so on. These kind of discussions will be led by specialists from our staff here who are experts on different languages, cultures, politics, societies from Africa, Asia, Europe, the Americas, the Middle East, and we also bring in people from the non-academic sector to build up your experience and networks of working across different sectors. I think it's back to you, Andrew.
Yes, thanks, Derek. So just to give a very brief overview of what to expect in the course, the MA Global Affairs specifically. As Derek mentioned, this is about gaining a global perspective on the most important challenges facing our planet, and particularly the local manifestations and how those interact with global trends and global patterns and potentially global solutions. So you'll be looking at geopolitics, obviously the environmental crisis, issues of development, health, conflict, even the information age, disinformation, and the ways that that can create problems, that polarization within societies. You'll be looking at the intersections between governance and the digital realm, between technology and culture, and at all times maintaining an eye on the social dimension of all of these planetary challenges, which, as Derek mentioned, manifest across many different scientific and non-scientific disciplines. You'll be working collaboratively with people from across that suite of 4 master's programs on live community briefs, so often in collaboration with local partners to connect this research expertise that we have here at Lancaster with those local manifestations and global networks. As Derek mentioned, the school includes experts on all parts of the world. So this is very important for understanding not just the local manifestations of global challenges in the particular place in which you're studying, Lancaster in the northwest of England, but also local manifestations in each other place, other major parts of the world, population centers and the like, where the manifestations can be very different. So in terms of the course structure, Derek, would you like to outline for us how people will spend the year more specifically?
Sure. So when you enter the course, you need to get a strong foundation in the ins and outs of what global affairs really is. And as we've already discovered, global affairs covers a lot. of different areas. And the Navigating Global Affairs module in semester one is designed to do that job, to give you the knowledge, build the skills that you will need to talk about, to navigate, to put into practice ideas about global affairs in all its different manifestations. So that's a great module for getting to know this subject area, for building your experience in handling the topics, arguing about them, uh, working with your fellow students on some of the assessments, and really developing your skills in the theory and discussion and building arguments about the key pressing issues in global affairs as a subject area. At the same time, you will join students from the other three MAs on the global leadership module. The global leadership module is very important. As I've already said, this set of MAs are called global leadership MAs. And we're really building a arts, humanities, social sciences approach to leadership here. This is leadership for people who want to work collaboratively in the way they lead, in a joined up way with people not only from other academic disciplines, but with people from different sectors, the government sector, NGOs, finance, business, and from places and organizations across the world. Learning to work in that kind of skilled intercultural way requires a lot of thought, patience, and practice. And the Global Leadership MA is going to help develop these kind of skills. Semester two, you move into what we call the studio modules. These are very innovative approaches to putting into practice what you have learnt in the Navigating Global Affairs module and the Global Leadership module in the first semester. So in the first studio, situated responses, you'll be working in a team with students from the Global Affairs MA working on a live brief. And a live brief means that you're given a scenario that reflects one of the global challenges of our time and requires a solution. You work through this brief with your team members, and you'll be engaging with different stakeholders from inside and outside the university who work with you to help develop your knowledge, give you feedback, help you develop, build, refine your ideas, your presentations, your practices that you want to see implemented as a result of your response to the brief. Studio 2, which is called Connected Worlds, brings you into a team where you'll be working with students from the other MAs, and you begin to join up your knowledge and your specialization as a global affairs expert with students who are developing expertise on global health, on the environment, on AI. And you work in that kind of multidisciplinary team in a collaborative way to another live brief, working with different stakeholders from within the university and beyond. So you can see there's this kind of progression where you move from semester one, building the knowledge of global affairs, to semester two, putting it into practice, first of all within global affairs as a team, and then into your interdisciplinary team, joining it up as you develop your expertise and your skills. Now, at the same time, we also have option modules, language module that you can do alongside these core modules that I've just outlined, where you get the opportunity to develop or hone your language skills. You want to work in a foreign language environment, you can put your project ideas into this, bring them into this language module and situate them in the foreign language. And we have carefully selected option modules beyond the language module as well that you can choose. And the final module is a dissertation module, or what we call the MA project, where you can really bring your knowledge and skills and experience from across the entire MA into a specific topic, and you can push that forward in a way where you develop extended knowledge and produce a good, substantial project that will serve you well as a springboard into your future career.
So I want to just bring in a little more specifics when it comes to, in particular, what we mean by global affairs, by zooming in a little bit on the navigating global affairs module that you start with in semester one. So just to give you an idea of the flavor of the kinds of global affairs that are covered, we would start with global history and the idea of globalization, and Lancaster's a particularly profound place to be studying that, given its long history as part of the slave trade and the British colonial empire. But we also want to look at this from an ecological point of view. So we'll be looking at the challenges that face the planet and its ecosystems in this time that scientists now refer to as the Anthropocene. It's the geological period in which human activity is the driving factor of change. We'll be looking at geopolitics and security, which of course is close to my own area of study, studying China's role in the world and the geopolitical rivalries that are going on in different parts of the world, not just China and the United States, but also India and also on the African continent as well. We'll be looking at that from traditional and critical approaches. There's ongoing questions of global economic development, and in particular, how to do that and achieve that in a sustainable way when there is so many parts of the world that remain underdeveloped, and at the same time as these planetary challenges are manifesting. Human rights, social movements, community activism are essential to the solutions in many cases. Global health and pandemics has obviously risen to the fore as something that can have knock-on effects and influence across all of these other various global challenges. Derek's already mentioned the challenges around AI, information, and ongoing inequalities with regard to access to the digital world. And then finally, we'd also, as a global affairs, it would be remiss not to be looking specifically into questions of media. And I mean here social media, the impact on culture, the impact on societies and how people get their information, and ultimately, how do we represent the kinds of global futures that we want to build? So we now have about 20 minutes to jump into an example of what you might expect to encounter in those studio modules that Derek mentioned for semester 2. And so this is really one of the most innovative parts of the course, in which you are given, as Derek said, a live brief. The idea is to come up with approaches in a team format to a scenario that you're given, and you work on basically analyzing the issues at stake and how to implement a response while applying the principles of global leadership that are taught in the first semester. So let's look at an example of one of these, which you will encounter in perhaps either Studio 1 or Studio 2. So you may be working with others from within the MA Global Affairs course or from across all 4 courses that were mentioned before. So fairly dramatic. It's 2028 and you're working for the United Nations in the Office of the Secretary General. And there's been a cyber attack, massive cyber attack. All UN systems, including the email systems, the financial management systems, the websites, they've all been taken down. No state or group has taken responsibility, but analysts are saying it does bear the hallmarks of a state-backed operation. And 2 weeks earlier, the UN General Assembly had passed a motion condemning the US President Donald Trump's announcement of postponement of the 2028 election. So one of the superpowers might be a prime suspect here. On the other hand, 2 weeks earlier than that, the UN Maritime Tribunal had handed down an adverse ruling against China, ordering China to withdraw from islands that it had built in the South China Sea. So maybe there's a motivation for either of the two main contending superpowers to be potentially involved in this. On the other hand, again, earlier in the year, an anonymous hacker group has pioneered the world's first AI-directed cyber attack. And they proved it by bringing down the World Bank's funds transfer processing system. So it's not even clear that it necessarily would be a state behind this attack. Your job: draft a public statement for the UN Secretary General. How is the UN Secretary General going to respond to this? So thinking about it in the first instance from a number of different disciplinary approaches, the Secretary General's statement really needs to urgently, that's one thing, he needs to have an explanation for the world's audiences very, very quickly in this type of scenario. And it's going to need to address the multidisciplinary implications of this attack. Environmental and social and health and humanitarian crisis response programs, they're all paralyzed under this type of circumstance. All the UN systems are down. There's geopolitics at play, as I mentioned. Multiple superpowers are potentially in the frame here. That's going to be a number of very fine lines to walk between those superpower potential adversaries. There's the questions of technology, the sheer difficulty of attributing something like this, a massive cyber attack. Oftentimes can't really prove necessarily who exactly did it. You've also got AI in the mix now, with AI recently becoming capable of directing cyber attacks. So how are we going to respond to that reality? There's obviously going to be problems of misinformation and disinformation flying around from various actors. So how should the Secretary General be addressing that issue? And of course, in communicating with such a diverse audience, global audience, the Secretary General's statement is going to have to reflect some very careful principles of cross-cultural communication and to take into account different differences in how the words are going to be understood across different contexts. So, Eric, what do you think about how we can apply the principles of global collective leadership?
Yeah, I think this is a really great scenario for examining that very question, Andrew. So thanks very much for setting it out, the key priorities there. And as we've already highlighted, collaborative leadership is a hallmark of this MA program and the set of MA programs. And here, I think the key initial ways in which leadership could be exhibited and could be implemented would be through coordinating with the various UN agencies to find out exactly how their programs have been impacted. The information that's needed here has to be detailed because there are going to be many, many people affected by the non-delivery of UN services across the world. People are not going to get paid. People are not going to get food deliveries to them. Logistics chains are going to break down. How is the environment going to be impacted by some of the equipment and the programs not being able to work? So all of this requires detailed information gathering and to help inform the communications that are going to go out. That's one very big challenge initially for leadership as a response to this unprecedented hack of the UN. Media needs to be a careful intervention with the media here, because it's not just about getting the information out regarding the impact on the UN programs. It's also about looking at the opportunities to get messages out through the media that the UN wants to emphasize around some of the different aspects of this hack. So the AI dimension, where AI not governed properly and without a coordinated global agreement on how to regulate AI, can be a very dangerous and potent weapon in the hands of unscrupulous agents. And it's about getting the message out through the media that the world needs to move towards systems of global regulation, governance, agreement on how and where and why AI can be used in different aspects and different policies, different practices around the world. The technology dimension here, where we are looking at potential non-state cyber capabilities, if it really was a rogue AI hacker group that implemented this attack, then is there a way in which states can be brought together to cooperate more on building effective mechanisms to try to shut down these opportunities for hackers? We're dealing, as always, in the UN with very tricky geopolitics. You've got big superpowers that Andrew was mentioning, who are potentially suspects in this case, in this particular scenario. How do we bring smaller nations together to enable them to feel that they have a voice, a say, influence? How do we create the mechanisms or utilize, leverage existing mechanisms in the UN and in other world organizational frameworks to help smaller nations get that collective voice to counterbalance and to get a different perspective over from and prevent the superpowers dominating conversations and policy agendas? There could be, as I said just now, an opportunity to institute new global norms of sets of cyber capability, of cyber regulation. This is a really important moment, an opportunity that shouldn't be missed. Multilingual translation is going to be a key element of the UN and any transnational organization in terms of the leadership challenge here, because you're dealing with so many different societies and cultures and languages, the communications that are going out to aid workers in the field. We're dealing with lots of different types of linguistic challenges here and complexities, not least in terms of agreeing legal and technical terminology. If we're going to have new agreements as a result of this hack, then we need to get the languaging of what we're agreeing consistent across different languages. And final point here, I think in terms of leadership, cultural diplomacy, we've got different approaches to AI from different member nations. We've got different approaches to the UN itself and views and perspectives. And these will differ from superpower to superpower. They'll also differ from smaller country to another smaller country. But how do we build narratives that are sensitive to the different views and perspectives from of the member nations, but can also bring them all along to the same place, or as many as possible to the same place? These are not insubstantial challenges for collaborative leadership.
Indeed, and each one of those points that you've outlined there, Derek, would need to be sort of exhaustively researched and looked into, and a particular strategy chosen on the basis of different disciplinary approaches. And so this is one of the advantages of dealing with this type of challenge in a team setting, in which you've got people from all walks of life across the MA Global Affairs course and the other global leadership masters courses. it's going to be essential, I think, as Derek has outlined, to be able to bring these multidisciplinary perspectives to bear on one particular scenario. So it also happens that many of Lancaster's researchers have touched upon many of these related issues. I'm thinking here of my colleagues Joe Burton and Simona Suare, who recently put out a book on emerging technologies and international security. There's also Professor Robert Geyer, who is an expert in complexity theory and how it relates to public policy, and particularly the ways in which challenges in one sector can spill over and have knock-on effects that were never anticipated in other sectors. We also have our colleague, Professor Charlotte Baker, who's done a lot of work with the United Nations and would be able to inform this type of response as well. Did you have any other suggestions, Derek?
Well, I could say a bit more about Charlotte. She's worked on albinism and in connection with victims of accusations of witchcraft. And this is a big issue across multiple countries. Charlotte's worked with a large number of different organizations for many years on initiatives at national and global levels, principally Francophone Africa, but also stretching into other parts of the world. And one of the great milestones was achieving a resolution at the UN on albinism and witchcraft accusations, which was a great step forward for them. And I think Charlotte's the sort of person who has exhibited that collaborative leadership that we've been outlining so far in this scenario, and being able to talk with her and people like her, researchers like Professor Burton and the others mentioned, and many others, will be a fantastic opportunity for you to develop more of an understanding of how collaborative leadership can be implemented in practice. It will be a great benefit for you going out to implement collective and collaborative leadership in your own career.
Indeed, it's also a great benefit for us who work with these colleagues. Myself and Lucia Ardavini from the Richardson Institute for Peace Studies, for example, are trying our best to follow in Charlotte's footsteps in pushing for a UN Human Rights Council resolution on the issue of transnational repression, the ability of actors or of repressive actors to reach across borders and infringe against the human rights of people in other jurisdictions. And so Professor Charlotte Baker has been a great inspiration for that project as well. Now, at this point, I want to hand over to another colleague, Ben Dalton, who we have with us here, to give a bit of a flavour of the MA Global Health Humanities course that he's developing and how these different courses can potentially fit together, and the opportunities that will arise when the students in each of these courses come together through those studio modules. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Andrew. If you could move it on to the next slide. So, yeah, thank you. So, as Andrew said, my name's Ben Dalton. I'm a lecturer in the School of Global Affairs, and I am the programme lead for the MA in Global Medical and Health Humanities. So this MA approaches medical and health issues and challenges, again, through interdisciplinary perspectives, through the arts, humanities, and social sciences. And at the core of this MA is the kind of argument or the belief that biomedical science alone cannot solve the healthcare challenges of our times. We need to also understand the social, political, and cultural dimensions of healthcare and medicine. So what are the medical and health humanities at the kind of core of this MA? So the medical and health humanities, they're a growing interdisciplinary field of which the importance for healthcare and medicine globally is increasingly being recognized. And it asks questions such as, how can the arts, humanities, and social sciences help us to face some of the biggest challenges facing healthcare? How can the arts, humanities, and social sciences help us imagine the healthcare of the future? And how can we understand further the social, political, and cultural dimensions of healthcare, medicine, illness, and well-being? Next slide, please, Andrew. So, Andrew and Derek have already talked a little bit about the kind of brief that you might get relating to cybersecurity, digital, etc. So, I thought that I would have a think about how you might approach this brief from the point of view of the MA in Global Medical and Health Humanities, if you were interested in exploring further links between health, medicine, and cyber, digital, etc. So obviously on this MA, you will be able to explore a very wide range of topics, theories, methodological approaches, from literature, literary and narrative approaches to illness, to philosophies and histories of medicine, to histories and philosophies of psychiatry, for example, or theories of healthcare inequalities, critical disability studies, queer theory and health, a whole range. But seeing as we're today talking about cyber and digital, I thought I'd give you some examples from this. So currently at Lancaster, we have a very diverse and rich research environment in which there are many colleagues working at the intersections of cyber and healthcare. So we have Professor Neil Reeves, for example, who is Professor of Secure Health Technologies, who is very much working on this issue. We have the Research Centre for Digital Health at Lancaster. And we also have a kind of research cluster called Health at Lancaster, which brings together colleagues from across the university working on different approaches to health, well-being, and medicine, whether that's in the medical school, whether that's in the arts, humanities, and social sciences, whether that's in the faculty of science, for example. And within the Health at Lancaster research area, there is a strand on data, cyber, and digital health. So if that was going to be your research topic, you would have all of these resources at your disposal. There's also a collaboration cafe at Lancaster University every Wednesday morning, in which I can see in a couple of weeks they're having a session on health technology and cybersecurity. I should say that kind of broadly or more widely in the UK context, we're currently seeing the New Hospitals programme develop the hospitals of the future here in the UK, and digital is a key focus of the New Hospitals programme. So thinking not just about the concrete structure of our hospitals, but what kind of digital landscapes do people also need to come into contact with when they access healthcare. So next slide, please, Andrew. So, what are some of the cyber and healthcare projects currently ongoing at Lancaster? So, I thought I would also kind of start by underlining that healthcare organisations and especially hospitals have been seen to be some of the most targeted institutions by cyber attacks. So, cyber attacks can be particularly deadly on institutions such as hospitals because of the vast amounts of very sensitive data that they contain. When we're thinking about building the hospitals of the future and building the healthcare environments of the future, increasingly we're needing to think about the digital landscapes of health that we construct because we're, more and more inhabiting those just as much as we inhabit physical spaces. So if you think about your most recent kind of access of healthcare, I imagine that a lot of that access will have been through apps or online spaces or via telemedicine, etc. So that's very much the digital landscape that we're experiencing healthcare in currently. Research has shown that the environment in which healthcare is provided has significant impact on patient experience and healthcare outcomes. And if that is the case, we not only need to think about how the hospital as an environment impacts patients, but how digital environments impact on patients. And clearly, something such as a cyber attack or an AI-guided cyber attack in particular is going to have very ruinous consequences on patient healthcare outcomes and undermine healthcare structures more broadly. So I'm currently working on a project at Lancaster called Creative Methodologies for Inclusive Healthcare Design Futures. And there's a photo of me and some of my colleagues there. So that's Dr. Dio Temidayo from PPR and Dr. Naomi Jacobs from Leica. And we're currently working together on this project. And our project is about making healthcare as inclusive as possible. My colleague, Dr. Naomi Jacobs, works in particular on artificial intelligence. So we're definitely kind of coming at the project and the question of building the hospital environments of the future, as well from the question of how do we make kind of artificial intelligence in healthcare as inclusive and as safe as possible, and how do we kind of make that interaction with healthcare spaces as inclusive and as safe as possible. So a potential project that you could look at would be asking the question, what is the human experience of cyber attacks relating to health? What does it mean to inhabit a healthcare environment that's made up of data? And to have that data kind of increasingly under attack, or that data increasingly handled by artificial intelligence and systems that are not themselves human. So some of the recent writing and research in health has talked about this experience of what it feels like as a patient to be transformed into data when you enter a healthcare institution. So a fantastic book that I'd really recommend is Anne Boyer's book, The Undying, where she talks about her own experience of having breast cancer, and she talks about her experience of going through the healthcare system. And I've just picked out this particular sentence. Contemporary medicine hyper-responds to the body's unruly event of illness by transmuting it into data. So she talks about how illness is a very human experience. Illness is felt in the body. It's an emotional experience. It affects communities, etc. But that she felt that when she went into the healthcare environment, her body was kind of transformed into sets of data in order to try and control it. And she found that to be quite an alienating experience. So a kind of project that immediately jumps to mind for me would be investigating the human experience of data, basically, in the healthcare institution. And what is a human experience of feeling like that's under attack in a cyber incident, for example? Next slide, please, Andrew. Oh, that's actually all I that brings me to the end of my particular part of the talk. So yeah, I hope that has been informative, but please don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you want to talk any more about the MA in Global Medical and Health Humanities. My name's Benjamin Dalton. My email you can find on the course pages, etc. So very much look forward to hearing from you and meeting some of you in due course.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Ben, and giving us a really profound illustration of the kinds of interdisciplinary depth that's going to be needed to tackle any one of these challenges that learners might face, both in this course, perhaps in a scenario-based way, but then also in their future careers, working on global challenges in international institutions, in government, in education, in research, and out in the community. So thank you for joining us and giving us that broad, multidisciplinary, illustrative perspective. So this brings us to the end of today's webinar. We would like to strongly encourage anyone who likes what they've heard to visit the course pages, the suite of 4 master's courses, including the MA Global Affairs. I believe there's a link on the screen there. There is a series of 4 webinars, each one focusing on a different one of these suite of 4 MAs. And by all means, get in touch directly with the program leads, which in this case is me for the MA Global Affairs. It's Ben for the MA Global Health Humanities, and the other contacts are available there on the website, and you will also be able to engage with them in their own scheduled webinars, which are also on the screen. You can also drop any questions at any time over to the School of Global Affairs at the email address shown on your screen there. Anything further to add, Derek?
Only to say that we hope you've enjoyed this webinar and we look forward to hearing from you. And take care, and it's goodbye from us.